Aaron Rodgers will give them the
Yeah.
best chance to win, but we're getting into May. We still haven't heard anything. If you don't want us, we don't want you. We'll run with Will Howard. Welcome back to episode 18 of Out of Town Yinzers. I'm Joe alongside Justin. Be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. We're here today talking Steelers, Pirates, Pens, and got some Pitt talk, talk when it comes to private equity, so stay tuned till the end. But today we're going to start with the Steelers quarterback situation. We've danced around it every podcast so far. Today we're going to dive in deep, talk Aaron Rodgers, talk Allar versus Howard, and really you're going to hear our stance, kind of where we are one way or the other. I think Steelers Nation is very split. I think we're going to be split between the two of us today. So it's going to be a fun conversation. Justin, why don't you get in right off the bat? Who do you think is going to be the Steelers quarterback on day one, and why?
I think it's definitely going to be Aaron Rodgers. I think he's minus 600 right now to start the first game. No, we're
So you can bet
definitely
on
in that
anything, huh?
weird. Yeah, you can bet on who's going to take. I think Howard is second at like plus 600 and or maybe plus 200 or something like that. But either way, before I even looked, it's not like that changed my mind. I would have said Rodgers. It's hard to bet against that. Obviously, everything that's been going on, not ideal. The UFA tender, the rarely used UFA tender that they put on him, you do not see often. It was used twice last year, which I would not have guessed, but it was actually used twice last year by the Browns and the Broncos on
J.K.
Dobbins
Dobbins,
and
yeah.
Elijah Moore. Yeah, I forgot about that until that was brought up. But yeah, not something you see very often. The Dobbins situation was a little unique with the injury as well. But yeah, it's a weird. Yeah, I heard Charlie Batch calling it like the Joker card, or kind of like they're playing their trump card in a way. I don't know. I don't know that it's that as big of a deal as maybe people are putting on. I think we're in a slow news cycle, so people are kind of freaking out about it. But what's your take on again to your question? Who do you think's going to start, and what's your take on the current status or the current state of their quarterback room?
I think the assumption of myself and all of Steelers Nation is that Aaron Rodgers is going to be the starting quarterback on day one. I think the reason why that tender is such a big deal is it was kind of the first big crack in the armor of that. Omar Khan was back in February saying that this Aaron Rodgers signing situation was not going to be as long as last year. We're going to know
Right.
one way or the other earlier than later. Well, it's looking like it's going to be later than it was last year, so that was completely wrong. So, Omar Khan's is right about that as he is about drafting Mekhi Lemon, it looks like. So now he's coming back with this tender when it comes through. And again, that's just one of those things that you can see a path where Aaron Rodgers isn't necessarily just not playing football next year, but maybe playing football for a team that isn't the Steelers. The team that was interesting when it comes to that, I think, is the Broncos. When you have the Bo Nix injury, the connection to potentially Sean Payton playing in that offense. So there are some people that could ride with an Aaron Rodgers as it go through. And I feel like this tender means that we're probably going to be longer into the cycle than we think as well. I know we're kind of like reading tree leaves when it comes down to it, but also seeing Aaron Rodgers pictured in a Jets sweatshirt instead of anything Steelers related. I don't know if you saw that picture recently as well, but it's one of
No, I
those things
didn't.
that just in general, when it comes to kind of an Aaron Rodgers, which way is he leaning one way or the other? It's again still most likely it's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but those odds are decreasing by the day, by the week, as I would think about Aaron Rodgers for the Steelers on day one.
Yeah, it'll be. I cannot even imagine what the response is going to be from the fan base. I mean, we're gonna us talking about it. What we're gonna hear if Rodgers doesn't come back is just gonna be a wild. I don't even want to. Part of me doesn't even want to get into it. Like, I don't even want to think about that just because of the response is just going to be so crazy. But yeah, it'll be something to see if he doesn't, and we will go. This offseason, we definitely want to get into the our differences maybe on like roster build and things like that. But that'll change everything. I mean, if Rodgers doesn't come back and their quarterback situation as it is, That'll change everything. I think the Cardinals are probably another team to watch for. Knicks, I think you're right. I've definitely heard the Broncos mentioned. I'd be interested in that because Knicks will be back at some point. You assume they're going to want to play him. I'm not sure Rodgers wants to go to a team where he's not going to be guaranteed the starter, but I've definitely heard them and the Cardinals are the two teams that seem to be mentioned the most at this point.
And going back to kind of what the overall vibes of Steeler Nation are, there was a poll on Twitter, I guess X now, by Tim Benz that had over 1,000 people vote on it, and it gave the four options. Who do you want, not expect? Who do you want the Steelers to have starting in 2026? And it was about as split as the four as you could get. Aaron Rodgers was at 18%, Mason Rudolph at 14%, still crazy he's getting any votes. Will Howard at 39%, and Drew Allar at 28%. So I don't know any other fan base that could have four options and that evenly split across the four on who the fan base wants to see under center on day one. I would say if I was voting in that pool, and I did vote in that pool, I went with Will Howard. I say, at the end of the day, I think Aaron Rodgers gives you the most aspect of kind of being there day one, but just seeing kind of what the next phase is for the Steelers as we've getting farther and farther into the offseason now with where Aaron Rodgers is, it's kind of exciting to see what that would be because you kind of know what Aaron Rodgers is going to be. So I feel like that's kind of the unknown aspect is kind of the excitement of Will Howard. But, I guess just seeing Will Howard play a snap in preseason could be just as exciting since we haven't even seen him throw a single NFL pass so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of that poll, if you take that poll in August, I bet you it's different, or closer to the season, I bet you it's different. Also, I think part of that is Steelers fans being like, well, if he doesn't want us, we don't want him. If he's on the team, that poll changes dramatic. Or yeah, that's it. I didn't see that. That is interesting to see. Just that back. So you picked Will. You would say Will Howard. You have been.
I'm
You
kind of
were
all over
out.
the
You were.
place, but I'm kind of that's kind of how I am in general too. I feel like Aaron Rodgers will give them the
Yeah.
best chance to win, as we've talked about.
Right.
They
Right.
have a good roster that can win, but we're getting into May. We still haven't heard anything, and the farther you kid, I'm kind of in the lean of the Steeler fan. You're like, if you don't want us, we don't want you. We'll run with Will Howard or run it back with things of that nature. So at some
So
point, Aaron Rodgers got to pick the Steelers and ride with us. So if that doesn't
Right.
happen, by we get through this mini camps in June and we're still kind of nearing training camp and haven't heard anything, I'll be further and further away from the Aaron Rodgers bandwagon. But if he would have signed up in March, I would have been riding with Aaron Rodgers for sure right now when we're talking about it in May.
Yeah, I just don't. The way I get that. I mean, I get it. You're hurt. I understand that. I can see that side of things. I do think I just look at it a little bit different. Now, the ironic thing is we've kind of flipped here. I was more let's embrace a rebuild. Was kind of my stance. So to kind of take the other side, I think week 2, Rodgers is playing. We're not going, oh man, I remember when he wasn't picking us in April and our feelings were hurt. I get it. Like, I understand it. And I'm not even really the win now guy, but I don't know. I just think the things that we talk about sometimes in the off season are just overblown a little bit. Completely get it though. This this scenario, we both would have said if you would have asked us in January and February if we would be where we're at right now, would we have been signing up for it? And we would have said no. So to take the other side of things, I definitely agree with you on that. I do want to. So no, I don't want to make this. We talked about Drew Allar last week. I want to give you a chance. I had 4 or 5 people reach out to me concerned, health check on Joe here because they're listeners. Which good news is they're listening. Week to week. They specifically pulled your quote from a few weeks ago. I'll just read this quote. My fallback would be a Nussmeier. This is talking about Carson Beck, obviously. My fallback would be a Nussmeier. I don't want to go anywhere near Drew Allar. Sorry, Penn State fans. So I just want to give. So we went from that to you saying I could be talked into an A. I think it was like 12 days later on Drew Allar. Just want to. You don't need to defend it again. We already did that week, and don't worry. I've got a lot of facts and figures on some of the things we were talking about. But do you have any comment on the waffling?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, for me, I wanted to swing in the third round. It happened. And to be honest, Aller did not show what you'd expect from a college production at Penn State in Happy Valley. He whittled in big games. I feel like everybody knows the negatives. So I think last podcast I tried to come in with more of the positives around Drew Allar, why a
Right.
third round
Right.
pick is appropriate for Drew Allar. If Drew Allar didn't have those warts, then he wouldn't be a third round pick. He would be a lot higher than that. I think the only reason why you kind of get him in the third. Nussmeier is interesting because obviously the NFL knew more about something with Nussmeier than kind of the outside casual fan kind of watching the prospect chart. So he fell all the way down for a reason. I
Yeah. Did you
you know I
did you
can
see
kind of
some of the
see it.
talk on that?
I would think was a little injury related. I feel like, and then also
Yeah, so
just
it's two. So the back thing that had plagued him turned out to be a cyst, like on his, I don't know if it was his spinal cord or whatever. But what's ironic is that's what everyone thought. That was kind of like we had made the point, oh, that's the story you can tell. Apparently there's something with his knee that teams are more concerned about. And it's more of a like how long can he really have career wise with his knee? But we don't need to go into him. I just thought that was I just wanted to give you a chance because some people were like, whoa, this is and in fairness, your initial comments were actually recorded 2 weeks prior. We put that into the draft preview episode as well. But to some people, it looked like literally 7 days, and there was a kind of a flipper. I do so to the point you just made about third round. This is where we might differ. I don't disagree. Like we talked about taking swings. Like this is the quarterback tax. This is the scenario. This is the situation the Steelers are in. Some of this is their own doing. But this is just the scenario they're in. I looked back. We had touched this. I didn't know we were going to go that direction last week. I kind of knew some of these things, but I actually looked into just to give some of the stats too on third round swings in the last 14 years, third round quarterbacks. I have them all written down. I would to be nice, I would say two of them total have turned into reasonable starting quarterbacks. Not a single one of these players ever started more than half the season they on the team they were drafted by. The best part about this, the craziest stat, two of them are current offensive coordinators. You have a better chance of drafting an offensive coordinator when you draft a quarterback in the third round than you do a guy that will ever start more than 8 games. I think the only one that did was Mike Glennon. It was rookie year, and he never started more than 8 after that. I included him. So it was Mike Glennon. I didn't include Jacoby Brissett. He played on 5 teams before he played half a season. And the other one, Malik Willis, is we don't really know. But when you're going through names
what
like
about
Hendon
Russell Wilson?
Hooker, Ritter, he was 2 years prior to that. So he was like 16. Him and Foles would have been prior to that. But then you go another like 12 years, and there's no one really before that.
Well, there's an
So
arbitrary cutoff to exclude a potential Hall of Famer on that list. But I think at
sure.
the end
So
of the
you
day,
got a
if you do any
it's less
stats
than
though on
4%
quarterbacks,
chance.
if you do any stats on quarterbacks outside of the first round,
Right.
putrid. They're not even that great in the
Right.
first round. It's really hard to draft a quarterback and draft one who's going to be there for a long time. There's only so many of them. So it's just anytime you're throwing out numbers like this, it's not going to be a good percentage.
Yeah, sure. And I just want to add some context to this stuff because like people were going crazy. And it's quarterbacks. People just there's no gray area with a quarterback, even though there should be. At the end of the day, a lot of these NFL teams, like you made the point last week, like we think we know quarterbacks. I don't even think we do. I think we've talked about this in fantasy football. I think it's just you kind of just go with the draft capital to some extent.
I
You
think
kind
so.
of plug your nose. And we talked about with Dart. Last year. I liked Dart, and he just kept getting a little higher, and we'll see what he turns out to be. But yeah, I just don't know that people fully like. We're talking about Beck. I thought you made great points, and I agree with you on Beck. And then people were like going crazy, and they're like, "You don't risk your franchise." We're talking about a third round pick. Like, relax a little bit here. Like, I don't, and at the end of the day, I don't think any of us are like, yeah, we're going to really bet on these third round, quarterback picks to hit. You can't. How could you? There's less than a 5%. There's a better chance to become an offensive coordinator than they do a guy that plays meaningful, more than half a season for you. So they're just people need to, you need to know the context when we're saying, hey, we might take a shot on this guy or take a shot on that guy. That there's context there behind what we're saying. So just wanted to point that out. I do think we undersold a little bit of Aller. I don't want to make this another thing, but I do think we undersold a little bit of his weapons. I would make the same arguments you did, but Harrison Wallace, the guy that left them, also led Ole Miss in receiving this year over Stribling. He actually had 100 yards more or 200 yards more at Ole Miss, and over 900 yards and more receiving yards than Stribling, who went 32nd. I don't think Chambliss had incredible weapons either. Now, to be fair, they throw way more. There's a reason for that in the offense and things like that, for sure. And Trevor Payne had about half his receiving yards, half the receiving yards he did at Syracuse this year with Penn State. And his best two games, his only games over 75 receiving yards, weren't even with Allar, and they were against Indiana and Clemson. So again, I just wanted to throw some stats out there.
I'll
People were
let you
angry
make the
online both
argument that
ways.
Penn State has good wide receivers. You can live in that
I'm not
grave.
making.
Yeah,
So okay,
that's all
we'll
fine.
go one step further. Joe, do you know who Jonathan Giles, Tanner Gentry, Jalen Smith, or Muhammad Massaquoi are? Well, you know Muhammad Massaquoi. He's not in the picture behind you, but those were the best receivers in college for Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Stafford. Again, I would be making the same arguments you made if I was on that side. I don't even think we disagree overall on these things. We just kind of stand on slightly different, not even really drastically different, just slightly different sides of the same argument.
Yeah, and you also just quoted those other quarterbacks who were drafted in what round?
First, and you did
There you
last
go.
week. You quoted Josh Allen. You compared him to Josh Allen last week.
No, I think in our group chat, what we were going back and forth was there a quarterback who had kind of bad stats in college that improved in the NFL, and there aren't too many of them. Josh Allen is certainly one of those
Yeah, it
who
was
had bad
accuracy with him.
stats in college that were worrisome when you were just statting a box score and got dramatically and kind of flipped and got better in the NFL, and he was one of those people. So that I think I'm
Yeah.
not saying
No,
he's
and
kind of
that's
the same. If you're going to make a body comparison and kind of a quarterback in terms of who they're going to be, it'd be more Will Howard to Josh Allen than it would be Drew Allar to Josh
right.
Allen. And when you
Well,
think
I
about their
don't know,
play
and that's
style,
another thing that would kind of concern me. Again, I don't want to, we're just kind of having the same conversation, but I don't know that because everyone talks about like prototypical. I don't know that he is like in today's NFL. Like you got to be able to like Josh Allen. Like to your point with Will Howard, they can move a little bit more. But again, it's a third round pick. I think it's a dart throw. I just wanted to point some of those things out. When we're talking about him. You brought up a good point. What do you think, assuming that this is let's just assume that Rodgers comes back. What do you think they do with this? You asked this in the group chat. That was a good question.
what do they do with the room?
With who are the three that end up on the roster?
Yeah, I think it's obvious that Will Howard and Drew Allar are going to be on the roster. And then the third quarterback is Aaron Rodgers if he comes back. And if he doesn't come back, that'll be Mason Rudolph as your veteran in that room. So I think you're going to be flip-flopping either Rodgers or Mason Rudolph as your veteran, and you're going to keep your two young quarterbacks and give Arth and McCarthy a chance to develop one of them into a long-term starter.
I agree with the thought process. My biggest concern with that, I think I said this when we were talking, was like if you're serious about competing and that's your biggest thing, I don't know that you want to have two guys who've never taken an NFL snap or even a preseason snap as your backups to a 42-year-old quarterback. And this might just go back to what we were talking about before, where it's like, what's your thought process on roster building and the team in general? But they'll probably try to move Rudolph, or they're not going to want to give up. Well, maybe it sounds like they don't want to give up on Howard. They're clearly going to give Allar. They're going to cut him. So I agree with your thought process. I just don't know. Like, if you're a team serious about competing, are you getting rid of Rudolph?
I think that doesn't go hand in hand. If you're serious about competing and Rudolph is your starting quarterback, you're not serious.
Well,
You're not going to
he
compete.
wouldn't be your starter.
So,
But
yeah,
if you need Rodgers is out 2 to 3 games, like that's what you're keeping it. If Rodgers is out for more than that, you are what you are anyway, for the most part. But yeah, it'll be. I've heard the report. Sounds like they're looking to move him. So I think you're right. Like I think that's what they're going to do. It's just goes against a little bit of like the whole. And maybe they are playing the long game more than we're even acknowledging. Like it's not like they went all in to do any of this stuff. So.
yeah, and the looking to move Mason Rudolph makes me chuckle as well. They're just going to cut him. Like, what are you going to get, a
Probably.
7th round pick?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Right.
There's no looking
Right.
to move. It's just you don't have Mason Rudolph on your team
The only
anymore,
reason they would even
which is
move, it
fine.
wouldn't even be for the pay. It would be more for like the cap ramifications or dead money, or if there's even any of that. So.
Yeah, I mean he's on the 2nd year of a contract, and I wouldn't expect there to be any guaranteed cash in there, but I don't have that in front of me. But you know what? Like I was kind of saying before, Drew Allar is someone that you needed to take a swing on. It was going to be Drew Allar. It was going to be Carson Beck. It was going to be somebody when it came to this draft. We all knew this draft was not that great. So no matter who they took, there was going to be people who were like, well, I don't really like him. Carson Beck can't move. Drew Allar didn't look great in college, particularly in big games. Nussmeier, we talked about his aspects. So everybody had kind of different black marks when it came to their game. And Drew Allar was the one that the Steelers took at the time that they felt, was the best for them. Maybe, again, we were talking about maybe it would have been a Carson Beck if he was still there, but it was Drew Allar. Heard kind of other people make this point. I think it's a very valid point as well. I think today's Steelers are different than yesterday's Steelers, so I think you got to fully give them a chance to develop a quarterback and make some choices when it comes to that position. The Steelers haven't made any good quarterback picks since Ben Roethlisberger, Mason Rudolph being the absolute best of those. They haven't made many in general either, which is kind of the point that I was trying to make when you're kind of building your roster. So the best case scenario for the Steelers when this year comes around is that Drew Allar does not see the field. So I think Drew Allar is another person that I think you have a whole year before you even talk about Drew Allar touching on the field. Hopefully he gets plenty of reps in a training camp. I think it's probably going to be one of the most interesting training camps and preseason games that we've seen in a long time, where they're completely fully split between a Will Howard, Drew Allar, back and forth. You know what Mason Rudolph is. He doesn't need many snaps. If Aaron Rodgers is on the team, he won't see any snaps. So the preseason is going to say a lot about the pecking order between Allar and Will Howard. I see a hard time Allar beating out Will Howard this year. Will Howard had a whole year being that backup, knowing what it takes to be that backup. And he's really setting himself up to be kind of what you were saying, to be someone who could come in for a couple games because he's going to be able to know the playbook, be able to run an offense the way he's expected to. So I think those type of things that are the strong points for Will Howard probably makes him a good long-term backup in the NFL. And that's without seeing, any snaps from him in an NFL setting. Right. So the biggest thing for me is when I think about the Steelers too, and I kind of summarize the quarterback situation for me and the outcomes is, A, Aaron Rodgers comes back. You're trying to win the division. You're going to push as far into the playoffs as you can. I think the outcome there and kind of the plus and minus is probably somewhere in between 12 if you shoot it out of the park and go nuts and win some games you're not supposed to, wins. Most likely right around 10 where they've been, but probably a floor of around 7, maybe 8. I think they're going to win plenty of games if Aaron Rodgers is in that aspect. And then B, again, I don't see Drew Allar winning this starting gig, and if he gets any starts and any playing time, it'll be late in the season when the season is long kaput if it goes that way. But if it's Will Howard to start the year, then I really think the range of outcomes are all over the place. I don't think 12 wins is kind of a way that you could think of it anyway. No. But I think getting to the playoffs and getting into that, 10, maybe 11, 9 wins and kind of sneaking in is possible, but also just completely blowing up and not being able to win 7 games and maybe even being that 6-7 game wins, is also possible. So I think the range of outcomes just extends much farther when you get to Will Howard versus Aaron Rodgers, which is a little bit narrower of a range of outcomes. Both of them don't have the ceiling that you'd want as a fan, that you can truly say, hey, we have a Super Bowl contending chance, which I think the rest of this roster probably supports that.
Yeah, no, I agree with pretty much all of that. I couldn't agree more too when it comes to like Howard and Aller. Like, I would just be like, there's no chance if this was the last. And that's not even a knock on Tomlin. It's just that's not his strength. Like, it never was, and that's the reality of what you get sometimes when you get a defensive coach. I do think that hey, like, I'm gonna definitely trust in McCarthy. It's one of the reasons we've been talking about. It's one of the reasons why we didn't. Some of the things that we didn't hate about the move. And this is going to be a very interesting, it's going to be a fun preseason to watch for sure. So yeah, I agree with pretty much all of that. It'll definitely be interesting to see what happens. We know if you like those win totals, you're already betting the division. So I think the over under is 8.5 on wins. So Joe's going to be hammering the over on that. We know that's coming.
If Will Howard is a starter, it could get ugly. So it's hard to bet on anything there. But it'll be a more fun first 2 months, and then we'll know what we're in for.
Yeah.
But it could be, the end could be over sooner when it comes to Will Howard versus I think you're going to battle all the way through if it's Aaron Rodgers in
Not
that
the
division
worst
and
year
with
to
the rest
be
of their talent.
terrible. Not the worst year to be terrible, if we're being honest. We're not, you don't look at anything. There's no one in that front office with a job that's looking at it that way, nor should they. But as fans, we can say, hey, if we're going to be terrible one year and finally get a top 10 pick for the first time in forever, this would be the worst year for that to happen. So we'll see how the quarterback situation plays out.
Yeah, I think either way you slice it, the Steelers are going to be in a position where it's probably going to be hard to win a playoff game again. I think they can make it to the playoffs, but to win a playoff game, win multiple playoff games, is going to be tough. There is a team in Pittsburgh that I think can win multiple series or at least one series in the playoffs if they get there. But the biggest if is if they get there. So the Pittsburgh Pirates have had a pretty back and forth last few weeks. They're 3 games over 500, which puts them just above last place in the really, really competitive NL Central. But Justin, have you learned anything the last 2 weeks with getting swept by the Cardinals and coming right back and sweeping the Reds?
I was basically, we talked last time we talked was right at the beginning of that Cardinal series, and we were talking about how the Cardinals are going to fade, and they just keep winning somehow. Do you think the Cardinals are for real?
No,
Yeah,
no, I
I
don't.
don't either, but their record certainly, and they have some really nice pieces. Some of those pieces are really coming along.
JJ
The Pittsburgh
Weatherholt
kid's
is
really coming
awesome.
along. Yeah,
Jordan Walker being
yep,
able to hit, like they got a couple of really good players.
yeah,
JJ Weatherholt is going to be someone that Pirates fans are going to hate for a really long time
yeah.
because he is really, really good. He's one of those guys. As soon as the Cardinals drafted him and he fell to them in that draft that year, it was like, ah, the Cardinals, really? That's where he ends up,
You
and
just
he's
know too if
exactly
he's a
what you'd
Cardinal, he's
expect.
going to be good. Yeah, yeah. It's just like they just always hit on those picks. So yeah, what a week. I mean, went from checking in on my 89-year-old grandma. She was done with the Pirates. First time I heard from her about the Pirates, and we talked about her listening to the game. She was out. She was done with the Pirates after that sweep. A lot of people, I got a lot of texts this week from Pirates fans like, well, season's over. And I'm like, all right, did you not listen? We just talked about this. Relax. It's a long season. And then they come back and look as dominant as they looked all year against the Reds. They lost a game pretty much every way you can lose one against the Cardinals, and they won a game every way you can win one against in the sweep against the Reds.
Yeah, and I think we've said this a ton. It's one of those in a baseball season, you kind of get narrow focused on a couple of games, one game, and I think it's really hard to wrap your head around how many games is 162. Just being able to
Yeah.
have that weathering of the storm and kind of bounce it back. That's one of the things that's most exciting about this Pirates team is when you have a starting rotation like they do, they shouldn't have too many stretches throughout the season where they're losing 4 or 5 straight games. They should be able to bounce back and take one of every series, win plenty of their series. So it's definitely an aspect where with their situation and where their strengths are as a team, they shouldn't have those long streaks that have kind of doomed some of those pirate teams that we're used to seeing. Where you have that swoon in late June where you're lose 12 games and then that exciting first 2 months of
He's
the
done.
season are
Yeah.
completely washed. I don't think that'll come this year when it comes to that Pirates team. And how about Braxton Ashcraft with his last game? And
Yeah.
layer that on Skeens, you layer that on Mitch Keller, who's been doing awesome. Bubba Chandler's the weak spot, and Karma Majinski's kind of the wild card. So they got a solid 5 and a really, really good top 3. And that's not even talking about Jared Jones, who will be back in 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah, I again kind of like Skeens and just in general, he up and down a little bit. To your point, they can't go in a 4-game series or a 3-game series when Skeens is pitched. You can't get swept, and there's just no reason for that. So, and I agree, like that they shouldn't, based on the strength of their team being the starting pitching in general. Yeah, Ashcraft looked again same deal. He was like the inverse of Skeens. He had a tough start to the week, and then he had a dominant performance to end it. So they're again it's peaks and valleys in a baseball season. You gotta look at like this is every game's basically, less than a quarter of a football season. Like how much do games change in that time? It's like half a quarter, even less than that. So again, you'd like to see I would have if that compounded and that became a thing and then it would have been an issue. But right away when you see them come back like they did against the Reds, Brian Reynolds is hitting now. the some of the lineups starting to come around. Griffin looked great. He's hitting 400, over 400 since he turned 20. That's a great sign. So the signs, if you look under the hood, like there's some really good positive signs. Things are trending the right way. They just need to avoid a series like they did against the Cardinals.
Yeah, 100%. And let's talk about Connor Griffin for a minute, and kind of wrap the Pirates segment just talking about how great he is right now as a 20-year-old. So it's hard to say this. I mean, we're just about a little over a month into him being in the majors. But you mentioned since he turned 20, which was on April 24th. So, moving the line on the short sample size, but he's slashing 405, 463, 676. So over a thousand OPS. He's playing shortstop. So I've seen a lot of people on Twitter saying, hey, like Sal Stewart's hitting better than Connor Griffin is right now. Like, why no love, or why is no one talking about Sal Stewart the same way, who's the rookie first baseman with the Reds? Well, there it is. He's the first baseman with the Reds. Connor Griffin is a shortstop, playing good shortstop, and really starting to hit. I love that he hits the best in close games, late in games. You can just feel the clutch stream with him. And the thing that's not even evident in this slash line is his speed. From him, if you think of the game that he won essentially by his performance in that eighth inning on Sunday when Ashgaff pitched that gem, he hit a double that should have been a home run in most other ballparks. And then he scores on a fire single up the middle from O'Neal Cruz that there are very few players that can score, especially as easily as he did. He did a head first dive, but he probably didn't even need to do that with how fast he was going around that aspect.
Yeah.
So he's going to do that. And honestly, sitting here today with him being up here in early April and how he's heating up, if he doesn't have 40 stolen bases this year, I'd be shocked. So that means that 40 of his singles turn into doubles, which is a huge thing from that piece. So he's been hitting 7th, 8th in the lineup for a while. He keeps this up over the next 2-3 weeks, they'll absolutely be able to move him up. And even if they don't move him up, the length of that lineup is so much stronger with Connor Griffin hitting above average.
It completely changes the dynamic. And some of the bottom, I mean, in general, Gonzalez has been a really nice surprise in general for them as well. So they've got some nice surprise. If anything, the top of the lineup, parts of the top of the lineup are what they need to come around a little bit, and it's starting to come around. But again, I agree on Griffin. There's nothing that you can really complain about at all at this point in what you've seen. People need to realize the age too. The age is just, in the position he plays, is just crazy. So there's going to be, again, like we just talked about, there's going to be peaks and valleys. It's baseball. I mean, you're going to have some bad luck at times. The exit velocity coming up like it has is a really big thing. So all the signs, all you really want is the trajectory pointing up, and it certainly is. That's all you really can ask for at this point. I wanted to bring up, I've been forgetting to bring this up for months. When you talked about, you were really getting me excited about Griffin in general, just selling us everyone on Griffin. When I was in, the moment I was in was I saw the You Got Moss segment. We're around the draft. I see, if anything, a Pittsburgh shortstop high pointing a ball like that at a receiver position right around the draft. We've been talking about the draft for 2 months. We're talking about receivers, and you see that on the You Got Moss. That's when I was in. I saw, this guy's awesome. He could play receiver. The Steelers need to sign him up. So wanted to bring that up because I've been forgetting to bring it up for months. But yeah, what a fun player. We talked about it before. It's just so fun when teams, their trajectory is pointing up like this early in a cycle. There's just nothing better. It was like the Penguins in 09. I'm getting, I talked my grandma off the ledge. We're back on. She's back on the train. Like friends that we're texting about the Cardinals series, just peaks and valleys. Relax. It's a long season.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I want to throw out here for the Pirates, just to talk about that lineup. So we talked a lot about Griffin. He's the game changer of game changers for that lineup, and really for the franchise. Like 9 more years, unbelievable. We're going to talk so much more about Connor as we go forward. But the length and the strength of the Pirates lineup is awesome, especially from where it came from. So last year they were a bottom five, really bottom 2 offense in Major League Baseball. This year, right now, they're 7th in Major League Baseball when it comes to OPS. So you only have teams like the Braves, Dodgers, Yankees, Cubs that are above them right now. So right now they also have 7 players that are above a 700 OPS. The only one outside of the catchers, which is kind of their own bucket, is Marcell Ozuna, who we know the struggles are, and we're kind of dreaming on him for turning around. So if you turn that to the 2025 Pittsburgh Pirates, Justin, put some trivia for you since you stumped me on some Pirates trivia before. Who was the OPS leader for the Pirates last year, and what was his OPS?
I'm gonna say it had to be Brian Reynolds, right? Or else you wouldn't be asking me this question. I feel like if it was
Brian
though.
Reynolds was second at 720. Spencer Horwitz was first at 780.
Oh wow.
Andrew McCutchen and Tommy Pham were the only other two who were, I wouldn't even say above 700. They were at 700. So you had four, and they were all pretty
My.
tough. Now you have seven that are above 700, including four that are above 800 with Lau, O'Hearn, Reynolds, and O'Neill Cruz. So the flip flop of how that lineup has happened this year versus
That's
last year
drastic.
is just like mind blowing. And then you layer that over kind of the starting rotation and the if you look at the Pirates fans and they talk about the team dynamic, they're really worried about the bullpen. The bullpen shouldn't be as big of an issue as we think it is. They have a lot of capable arms that are doing really well, just kind of a little overused. And maybe you don't have that prototypical closer at the end. But this is a really a complete team, a really good team that's actually on an 88 win pace right now. It just so happens that it's fourth place in the NL Central, and I think that'll wash out as it goes forward as well. So
Yeah, they'd be
Pirates just
leading
need to
two
keep
of the
on.
three. They'd be leading two of the three American League divisions, and they've played 19 games, I think it is at this point, with against teams over 500. That'll even out. This month does. There's a West Coast swing, but this month the schedule does weaken a little bit, which they need.
Yep, exactly. And they've played a lot of home games so far, so they got to keep this going on the road. And
Mhm.
kind of we'll be checking in as the summer goes along. But it's going to be a long season, and really, I think there's only positives from a Pirate standpoint here on May 5th. More so there are any negatives when you kind of weigh on the two. And one thing I want to make sure that we don't touch on our podcast for a while is any trade talk. I feel like that's already proliferating throughout Twitter and on radio aspects is who are the Pirates going to trade for? There's going to be no more there's going to be no trades for 2 more months. So let's think about the team
It's
as
just
is
low
for two
hanging fruit.
months and kind of
Yeah,
walk
it's
through
just
it and
low
go
hanging
forward.
fruit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's the team that I think will have the most likely chance to win a series as you go forward. The Penguins are the team that had the chance to win a series most likely and struck out really with completely laying an egg the first few games and couldn't come back. But Justin, any closing thoughts on the Penguins season and how they closed out with the Flyers?
Yeah, my thoughts, Joe, we talked about this last week. It's kind of again what we talked about. I just didn't have any faith that they were no, they looked awesome in game 6. Those stats in the third period and overtime, the posts they were hitting and everything. It just that happens. It's hockey. That's why you can't get down in a series is you can dominate a game and lose. That's just the reality in hockey. It felt like I think both teams kind of felt like if this goes to 7, especially with it going into overtime, I think the Penguins win that series. But again, they didn't put themselves in position for that to be the case. They should have been up in that series so that game 6, if you lose it like that, well, you lost a tough one. But you can't you can't lose the first two the way they did. So didn't deserve to win the series. The Flyers deserved to win the series, but the last 2.5 games, really in general, turned into what we kind of thought, with the exception of the power play. We can talk players and this player let them down, this player didn't. Really, the power play is what let them down. The offense is what let them down. But, and we can make excuses for, well, the Flyers are sitting back in that 1-1-3. That has nothing to do with the power play. I mean, the power play, those guys just you could tell they hadn't played together at the beginning. And even then, into the game 6, they just looked disinterested at times. And they could have four Hall of Famers on the ice at one time on their power play. They don't always. A lot of times you're getting Letang or Carlson, but he just at times it just doesn't look like it. So it's unfortunate, but I would blame the power play. There's other reasons obviously, but the goaltending was awesome. We would have. I mean, can you imagine if I would have told you what the goalies were going to look like before the series? I mean, you would have been like, oh, this is going to be over. This might be a 5-game series if you would have known how the goalies were going to look like overall. But again, that's hockey. I mean, you can, even when you play well, you can lose games, and they just didn't play well enough early in the series to give themselves a chance.
So Silovs played awesome in Game 6. But if I also said that the Penguins lost in overtime because they let up a goal from the blue line against Silovs, you wouldn't be surprised
You
either.
said it. You said it. I think you said that specifically. There's going to be a goal when I think you said when she loves when there's a shot from the point. I'm not confident before the series started, and that's how. Yeah, I had a Flyers friend that was asking me like, hey, like Sheilov said that he got screened on the last shot, and I didn't even explain this well to him. I was like, he did get screened, but like that's part of the job description. That's actually what separates a lot of NHL goalies from AHL goalies is you have to be able. There's always traffic. It's not like that traffic was incredible. You have to be able to see around that. I think he was he got stuck between when he was looking from one side to the other, and then he guessed and he guessed low because the shot from the point. Why is a D man going to throw a wrist shot floater from the point and he guessed wrong is what happened. So he got screened, but it's not an excuse. I mean, you can't get screened in that scenario. It wasn't even a crazy screen either.
Yeah, he had so many crazy stops, and then that was definitely
Yeah.
a
And it
stoppable
was,
goal that goes in. That
yep,
happens a lot when you're in those overtime games. One just kind of sneaks in one way or the other, and
four total shots. You look at the shot chart and it's like, oh my, this is like domination in the third period and overtime. But that's what happens. Like, it's always just talked about it before the game. I want more pucks on net. I don't care if they're perfect shots, and that's what had them advance. And we talked about it last week. The consolation is the Hurricanes can be dominant. In reality, the Flyers, to this point, have scored one goal through 7 periods on even strength. So I don't know that I don't think it would have looked much different if the Penguins were in that series. So the consolation, I guess, is it wouldn't have looked any better if the Penguins played the Hurricanes, most likely.
yeah. And honestly, we said this before too, but this was the surprise season for the Penguins. We never expected
Hmm.
a playoff appearance, and to them to be the second in the Metro. And you could see it with their roster too. Their roster was old. It was on short term deals. There's going to be a ton of turnover. The one person who was on a 1-term deal feels like he might not be back, and that's someone who's been with us for 20 years. Justin, is Evgeny Malkin going to be a Penguin or a Washington Capital next year?
Oh God. Oh wow. You okay? All right. So nice segue there. Just put that on me. I can't imagine Malkin. It could happen. I get it. I mean, he was there's times in that playoff series where he's turned the puck over at the blue line, but I just can't see a scenario. Money isn't a thing. They have the most cap space going into the offseason, so it shouldn't be a thing. I don't think he's going to demand some crazy amount. He wants to be back. They should want him back. This is not. Some people might say, "Well, how's it any different than McCutcheon?" It's a different situation in general, and you can make the argument that McCutcheon played decent last year, but I think they're getting more out of Malkin. He also has transitioned to the wing pretty well. They don't need to rely on him like they did before. At the end of the day, too, he won 3 cups there. Like, this should be a scenario where they figure it out, would be my take. I can't imagine a scenario where they don't figure it out, but we'll have to see. They're already starting talks, and we'll find out pretty quick here, once the season wraps up, because, with free agency in July, things happen fast after an NHL season.
So here's the scenario that it doesn't happen in my mind, because I think it's more realistic than people are leading on, is that
Mhm.
because the Pens have the cap space that they do, I would be shocked if Dubas doesn't make a move or two significantly in that top six. And if you make a
Yeah.
significant move in that top six, then all of a sudden Malkin may not have a place in that top six on the Pirates roster the same way, or the Penguins roster the same
Mhm.
way. And if he's not a top two line player for the Penguins, I don't know if he's coming back the same way. So I think there could be a scenario where they just happen to add players that are better than Malkin, and they can have a little bit more term to some of those deals as well. So that's a scenario
Yeah.
in which I feel like Malkin is playing in a different color jersey next year.
No, that's a good point. I don't think they would really want him on he kind again, their second, third lines were unique this year. It's largely because of Kindle's age and things like that. Um, the situation you laid out. If I was to say lay out a scenario, that's what I would say. It's not going to be because of money or anything like that. The counter I would say to that is I do think if they make, well, they will make a significant move. I don't think there was a playoff team that had a more glaring need than a top four D man than the Penguins. So one, maybe even two. We're even bearing the fact that I think Letang is definitely gone. I don't even know that there's people making the argument against that. He did play better in the playoffs, but you don't want to go through another season with that would be my guess. So one, maybe two top four D men. That might be a reason why he ends up staying. But yeah, what the scenario you laid out sometimes just depends on how free agency falls and who was willing to sign and who isn't type deal. So it's possible. What if I again, like I said, if there was a reason that I said he doesn't come back, it's because of that. It's because they added the top six and they're not sure if. And he might even say, I don't want to be a third line, winger. That's not what I want to do. I can play top 6 minutes somewhere else. I just feel like they'll get it done, but we'll know soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, summer's going to be some fun months when it comes to the Penguins, and I think we should expect significant roster turnover. And we'll be here to take you through it and give our take on if it's one way or the other. So wrapping up today as we kind of move on to Pitt. We don't have the Pitt hat guy on the other side here today. Got a different hat going on, but still the guy who knows Pitt better than the two of us. Justin, the Big 12 just finalized a pretty historic 5-year private equity deal. There's been other talks of kind of private equity being part of conferences and what that means. That means at least immediately that teams are going to get an influx of money. Whether or not that means they'll get less kind of in longer term because private equity is taking a stake is to be determined. But what does the Big 12 deal mean to someone like the ACC and a trickle down to a school like Pitt?
Yeah, I think this is like the continuation of the trend we've been talking about. I think this is a bigger deal than people. It's not like this is shocking. Like was it Penn? There were a couple of teams that signed like their own versions of this to a lesser extent. It's just a big deal when it's at this level. So it was what 12.5 million to the league. The options. I think the thing that this is happening in real time. There's a lot of teams that are turning down that additional like line of credit. I don't know. Like I heard like double digit, points or percentages on the return. I don't know why they would. I think these schools can probably figure that. That to me, that reads as like, okay, we're just going to make this seem bigger than it is. So we're going to throw out these bigger numbers and add some numbers to it, things like that. But this is a big deal. College sports. I mean, at this point, I don't even know. I don't remember the last time I heard someone say the word amateurism. I mean, that's completely out the door at this point. And they're not even these conferences, these schools. They're not even acting like it. Which I mean, maybe they probably shouldn't at this point because clearly it's not. But yeah, this is a big deal in general. I think you're going to. We talked a couple months ago about the Olympic sports. I think you're going to see more and more of them losing funding, going away, type deal, which is unfortunate. And we don't know where this ends up. We've talked about before. I still think it ends up with them breaking away. The NCAA has almost no power at this point. That's probably, it's a bigger discussion. But if it's up to me, that they started that ball rolling about 30 years ago when they just did nothing in multiple situations. But this is a big deal. I think this is a really big deal. You're going to see more of this. You're not going to see other conferences go, oh wow, they got some money via private equity. Let's not do that. And they also there's some things under the hood here. I think this Redbird Capital Partners, they have connections. I think they're part owners of Paramount, I want to say. So like this could be a way in for these, these private equity to tie their media partners into some of these conferences. So there's a lot going on here. And this is only the beginning of it. We're at like the beginning of this cycle, and it's going to get crazier and crazier as we go in general.
No, I agree completely. It's the wild west of college sports, and it's still to be determined on how things all shake out. There's still a lot of money to be flowed in and flowed out of those schools for sure. This is kind of the first shoe to drop, and I could see the ACC being a conference that follows suit just because they don't have the same TV deals as well. So just kind of supplement some of those just for the way the rosters go. So Justin, we're at the end of days here. So if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do that now. But you wanted to not talk about nostalgia, but maybe a different topic to wrap the show. So why don't you lead this one?
Yeah, so we We've been growing a lot on Facebook. So that's the good news. The good news is we're doing really well. Kind of came out of nowhere. We didn't really expect that. We're starting to see some, momentum and growth in general. So if you aren't, this is going to be a wild segue. If you aren't signed up or following us on social media in general, certainly do that. The negative to that is we have seen, you guys are going to be shocked hearing that the best of the best are on some of these social media sites, and some of the responses we get are just pretty hilarious. So I just wanted to read some of our haters, I guess is the best way to put it. So a lot of really bright comments, really thought out comments that you can't even really respond to some of these. Sometimes we do just to see, and like with a hey, like what's your take? And there's never a take that comes back. But I wanted to read some of these. This all started. The first one I'll jump into. We threw one of our shorts, and these are also short videos. So they're 40-second clips. They're not getting the full conversation, but we threw a short about the Penguins' schedule. Could not be any more objective. Could not be any more like it's a fact. It's not. It wasn't. They had the hardest schedule at that point remaining in the league. That's a fact. There's no opinion there. We got a guy that came at us hard. He said, your podcast is a joke. You don't criticize the Penguins at all and are politically correct about everything. So I was like, okay, I don't know where that came from. We didn't even say anything about the Penguins other than just their schedule. And then I said, hey, like they've just taken 5 of 6 points, against the 3 best teams in the league. Like, do you really think we should be critical right now? We certainly have been. His response was just spam, which was a hilarious response. So that was the first one. Joe, I think I threw some other ones in here about some of these were, they're predicted at both of us or projected at both of us, but they're just hilarious. Some of the stuff we're not even going to include. There's some bad ones that we're not even including, but
go ahead. Yeah, you keep reading them.
Yeah, so we had the first round prediction short where we just threw up like our predictions. We even changed them actually after the fact. But one guy's reaction was wrong. You have no clue. Not taking a wide receiver with the first pick, morons. Well, they were on the phone with Makai Lemon last time I checked, and we also talked about tackles. Like those are the 2 positions we had. So Doug was not happy about that the projection by the morons there. And then the Carson Beck short, that one I did not expect that. People are just go crazy about quarterbacks, like we've touched on. The response, I don't want to get censored here, so it was just expletive, you're dumb, and it starts with an F. I'll let you guys figure that out. Not much more to it than that. People just have opinions when it comes to quarterbacks. That's for sure.
I think my fantasy football league probably agreed with Williams on my take on Carson Beck. So,
yeah, on Carson Beck.
It's okay.
Yeah, but it was just funny because it's like we're talking about guys in the 3rd round. Like this isn't some crazy take, but people have opinions on quarterbacks, like we talked about before. And then the best so far was our day 1 and 2 draft short that we just dropped. Well, really the 2. I kind of cut them. We cut them into 2. One guy came at me and he said Pitt gave the Allar grade. Not surprising. Probably wishes we kept Pickett too. So I did respond to this one. I was like, I've called for 4 other Penn State players and a West Virginia player. Happy they're on the team. I don't think this is a Pitt Penn State thing. And he didn't respond, of course. And then the day 3 short, people were not happy. So we got Jeremy coming at us for being not critical enough about the schedule, and we had people really come at us for our grades. Which the hilarious part about this is watching it and having you joke around about Wheatgen's collar, and then people are just so mad in the comments. First, there were a couple good ones, but the first one, David said, how can your grade buy lower than the player rating, dumbasses? I don't think he meant that. I think he meant, how can your grade be lower than player ratings? I think he thought we were grading the whole draft. It was just the day 3 grades. I'm not sure what he meant by that. He was not happy. Then Rich, this one was actually a little creative. He said, your grades for giving grades is a D. So he's giving us a D. I'm giving the grades, which I thought was good. You should go back to sitting at a bar eating pretzels. Thought that was pretty good. I like that. One guy did criticize your he thought your Jeremy Bernard grade was not high enough. It was like he gave him a B, but all right. But yeah, people are very like that's just scratching the surface. People are very opinionated online. So wanted to give you guys, and we were going to talk about today. There's some crazy stuff with AI going on, and some of like the fan pages and the boards are like taking over things in there. It's not bad or good. It's just some weird stuff. Very clearly some of it's really funny. We'll have to cover that at some point. But so things are about what you would assume they are on social media nowadays. Not much has changed if you haven't been on there. But like I said, like and subscribe and comment on the page, because all this stuff, the irony here is all this stuff helps us. So we do appreciate people commenting no matter what their opinion is.
Absolutely. Well, go eat some pretzels at that bar behind you. We'll be back next Wednesday.
All right, see you later.